Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our 5e Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign recap. And when we last left off, our party is approaching the Drakkenheim city garrison, which is currently under the control of the Hooded Lanterns. And as the party got there, they're just kind of coming by to check in with the Hooded Lanterns and see where things stand as far as the attack on Temple Gate. And much to their surprise, they find the garrison under siege when they arrive. Our party is approaching from this direction, and this pack of ghouls, there's more ghouls than I even have minis for here. All these ghouls are attacking the garrison, and they've made these makeshift ladders and things that they've scavenged from the city. And they've got them leaning up against the walls of the garrison, and they're just climbing in like World War Z style, just piled up on top of each other, streaming up these walls, and the harried defenders are shooting down, trying to take them out. And over here, kind of back in the distance just a little bit, is this mysterious vampire woman in the low-cut black dress with a couple of ghouls guarding her. So party rolls for initiative, and Nexel was close to the top of the initiative, and since he's just reached 5th level, he unleashes his first fireball. It streaks out and explodes here amongst all these ghouls, and I describe, their bodies flying Michael Bay style every direction. This huge pillar of flame erupts from his fireball. The ones that failed their saving throw were killed instantly, and the ones that succeeded in their saving throw were all down to like 2 hit points. But there were still some on these ladders and stuff, and they were spread out enough that he couldn't completely destroy them with his attacks. So the party springs into action, and as I remember, Pietro decided he wants to go fight the vampire queen girl, and I think Atticus was originally going to try to come in here and fight some of these ghouls, while these two stayed back here and we're gonna sling spells, right? And during that first round, I gave them all a perception check, and I think it was only Thaddeus who realized in the midst of all this Helm's Deep melee kind of craziness that was going on, he perceived that 2 Hooded Lanterns had actually been kind of dragged down, kind of pulled over the walls and kind of handed down the steps, kind of falling and being carried down the steps, and were now being carried away by these, each had like 2 ghouls that was kind of dragging them away from the field of battle. And of course, the players, once Thaddeus told everybody about that, the players are like, okay, so we got multiple goals, multiple things we're trying to take care of at once. And I think Thaddeus recognized that they were feminine. They sound like a woman's screams of rage and pain. They were trying to figure out if it could be that one of these lanterns being dragged off would be none other than Petra Lang, one of Pietro's many potential romantic interests in the campaign. And by the way, they did look up and see Knight Commander Elias Drexel was up here he's a little short compared to these other guys. He was up here leading the defense of the garrison. So they see these women being dragged off, and Pietro gets over here, and he's trying to take her on, and he finds out pretty quickly she's pretty tough. I was using the stats for an Alp, which is from the Witcher universe, and I found this really cool fan-made 5e conversion of all the Witcher monsters. So I was using those stats for her, and of course she's on a nightmare. And then these 2 guys are ghasts, not the regular run-of-the-mill ghouls down here, but they're actually a little bit tougher. So Peter gets up in her face, and she starts lashing at him with her claws. And the cool thing about using some of these fan-made things and third-party things is they're not always very balanced. Sometimes the monsters dish out a lot of damage for their challenge rating. So he was about to be hurting for certain. But he's yelling at everybody. I'm gonna take her. You guys try to rescue them. So I think Atticus decided to come over here and try to help with her at some point, because these guys actually ran off. I think Nexel might have shot a chromatic orb of acid on her, which did the PG-13 costume damage, just kind of revealed some of her midriff a little bit. When it burnt her, so she didn't like that, and Thaddeus was using Erupt Earth over here, and he was trying to knock down these ladders and take out a bunch of these ghouls potentially, and also make difficult terrain, maybe so that these guys couldn't get away so quickly. So the fight developed pretty quickly. These guys start coming over. So Thaddeus decides to wild shape into a horse. I don't have a horse mini handy. I just use the bear for everything he wild shapes into right now. But he decides to wild shape into a horse and just come charging over here to intercept these guys. And Nexel uses his, phantom step or whatever, where he's able to teleport as basically a bonus action or whatever. So these guys are running around trying to take down the spellcasters, and these guys are dragging these two away. Nexel gets far enough away, he twin spells a Eldritch Blast or whatever it's called, and manages to damage a couple of them. He turns back into himself, and he's trying to use spells to sort of damage these ghouls enough that they won't be. These women are struggling, but they're kind of being dragged and knocked prone and all this kind of stuff. And the party's just trying to damage these things enough to get them off of them, to get the ghouls off of the lantern women. So these guys end up over here. So she decides, I'm looking through the spells that this fan-made thing gave her, and she has sleep and she has hypnotic pattern. And I think when both of these guys were together, she dropped a hypnotic pattern on them. Both of them saved, but that was one of the things that made Thaddeus decide he wanted to get out of there and get into the fight. So now she's over here. I'm looking through her spells, and she has the sleep spell, which she's able to cast at like 3rd level. So that's a lot of hit points if you understand how the spell works. I'm reading through the description, and it says, it starts with whoever has the lowest hit points, not including undead, which of course she is undead. And her horse, Lucifer, had hardly been hurt at all, right? He's a nightmare. He's got plenty of hit points. So she drops a sleep spell right on herself. And old Dirt Nap Pete goes for just an ordinary nap as opposed to his usual dirt nap situation. And Atticus is trying to solo the Vampire Queen. A couple of these guys get knocked off. I think Nexel, when he used that Eldritch Blast, took out one, and I think Thaddeus might have taken out the other one. So now they can no longer drag these women because they're fighting, and they realize one of them is definitely Petra Lang, Handsome Ansem's sister. So at this point, some of the defenders are actually clambering down these ladders to help and so forth. And my fight is starting to not go the way I want. I think one of these guys got taken out by a powerful spell. And the thing about the ghasts, as opposed to the ghouls, they do have this stench ability, right, which can give you the sickened condition if you're adjacent to them. But you get to save against it every round, and once you save, you're immune to it for the rest of the day. So Nexel had saved. He's immune to it for the rest of the day. Thaddeus had been sickened, but he was using spells and stuff instead of anything that the sickened condition would matter about. Peter's asleep, but not that badly hurt. And Thaddeus and Atticus, that is trying to finish her off. And she took a real beating from these lads. He was spending all his key points trying to get at her. And she's supposed to get 2 claw attacks and a bite, but I'm such a softie. He asked, can she really bite me from the back of that horse? Especially in a ladylike way, without falling off or leaning over too far in an indelicate manner. So I decided she could only use her claws and stuff, plus her spells. So now she's down to, I think she got down to 7 hit points or something ridiculous. So even though she is a vampire, and if she gets killed, she just turns into mist and goes back to her coffin. Even though that was the case, Lucifer decided to go ahead and become ethereal with her and peace out. Atticus steps over here to block these things. They go running, these go running. The battle's over. All of the remaining ghouls scatter. Thaddeus comes over here and kind of kicks him awake, and he says his usual thing when he comes back from bleeding out, which is, "Did we win?" But this time he was just asleep. He's just laying there drooling a little bit. And he's like, "Did we win?" And they had one, and they went on inside the garrison. So the party gets inside, and to be honest with you, I kind of let my players down in this scene. I didn't really have anything dynamic or interesting for the NPCs to say. I wasn't even talking in their voices and stuff. I was still kind of catching my breath after what I thought was a pretty cool fight scene. So basically they get in there and didn't have much of a conversation with the NPCs, except to say, hey, I think it might have been Thaddeus, who noticed, or no, it was Atticus. He noticed that this vampire queen woman, this Elvira girl, she had a little brooch, she had a little pin holding on part of her cape, and it had the inverted pentagram with the goat's head in it, with the ears and the horns making the pentagram shape, which of course is the symbol of our old buddy Orcus, right? So Thaddeus, his personal quest from the book is that he has this family heirloom, this family rug thing that he made up, that he's searching for, and he knows it's in the hands of the cult of Orcus. And so now they find out that this woman was, this vampire woman, this Alp, was part of that cult, apparently, and this attack had something to do with the cult of Orcus, and why they were trying to kidnap these women. The party doesn't know. Atticus floated maybe it had something to do with, this is how they reproduce. They take women and subject them to something. But it was the general opinion of the other people who made knowledge religion checks that probably wasn't right. These things are more like succubi. They usually prey on men. So, but the party decided, hey, you guys are all rangers, right? Old Petra is an urban ranger. What if we take a short rest, get some of our abilities and hit points back, and see if we can track these things back to their lair, which should be the hidden temple of Orcus. So it was agreed that's what they're going to do, and with Petra and another unnamed urban ranger, they go ahead and they head off through the mists, right? And I let the players roll the survival checks for the rangers to follow the tracks, and they were rolling rocks. They were rolling great. The rangers were having no problem following the tracks. But, of course, even for an urban ranger, the inner city is dangerous. We know for a fact that the streets constantly sort of rearrange themselves and distort to make even the most experienced urban ranger potentially get lost. So the party steps through this curtain of mist, and they come into this sort of town square area. And as soon as they step out of the mist and Petra realizes where they are. Her face immediately falls, and this chill runs down her spine because she's looking into Slaughterstone Square. Now, this location, the party had even heard rumors about, that you've got to avoid Slaughterstone Square at all costs. And you can see there are all these bodies laying around in this, what used to be this town square. And here is the sort of stairs going up to what used to be the executioner's, like the guillotine, right? And then there's this big pool here, and the water is like pinkish red flowing, where it's had so much blood added into the water that the water is almost red. And standing there in the midst of all of this is the executioner, right? So I got to use this mini. He's got all these kind of skulls and blood decorating his back. He's got a stock here on his base, and his axe, the executioner's axe, you can see it's actually the guillotine blade, repurposed and painted by Atticus's player to be his axe, which I found out later he could actually throw. I didn't realize that at the time. So this guy is standing right here, right? And the party has an intuition that he's too tough for them, but they don't know yet, like, how much too tough for him he actually is. So we roll initiative, right? And of course, I shouldn't say of course, but to the party's doom, demise, terror, the executioner wins initiative. So he's got 40 feet of movement. He's able to get all the way up to the party and end his turn, right? He's right up here next to everybody. So he ends his turn up here, and then Pietro was next in line. And he had an agonizing several minutes, his player did, trying to decide what he was going to do. So everybody understood they needed to run. Petra had yelled run. Everybody could see from her stance and the stance of the other urban ranger, they were getting ready to book it. She's like, split up, try to lose him, right? But, Pietro is a ladies' man, and he doesn't want to just take off on his turn, because, of course, the way D&D works, because of initiative, it's not like we all just run at once, right? The way D&D works, it's like he's running and leaving her there, because his initiative comes before hers. So there was an agonizing several minutes where he's like, I'm going to run, but then I'm going to ready an action. No, I'm not. And so he had leveled up, and he has access to Stunning Strike. And so after going back and forth several times with different things he could or maybe couldn't do, I think by the way, somebody like maybe Nexel and Thaddeus, Thaddeus turned into a horse and took off running like he did in the last chase that these guys had. And I think Nexel may have moved back too. But none of these frontliners had moved yet, and Pietro was trying to decide what he was going to do. So he knew that this might, cost him his character, but he's like, I'm going to try to Stunning Strike this thing, and then I get the disengage, and I can move, 40 or whatever it is away from it. So this guy is CR 20, friends. He has killer stats. He has killer abilities. It's like a constitution save that he needs to make, and he's like +8 on constitution saves, and the DC for Peter was only like 12 or 13, something lame like that. So I lean over the screen, I roll a 20-sider in front of everybody, it comes up a 3. The executioner fails his save against the Stunning Strike, the most critical moment of the game so far. And then Atticus, like the total piece of dirt he is in real life, is like, hey, wait, does he have legendary resistances? Just asking for a friend. Well, you know what? He does have legendary resistances. He even has legendary actions. But I decided earlier in the same day, he had actually wiped out an entire party of 16th level paladins that the party didn't know about, and he had already used up his legendary resistances for the day. So Pietro manages to stun him and then take off running. He doesn't get any actions or reactions until the end of Pietro's next turn. So the party takes off into the city, and the Rangers are splitting up, right? And so the party is like, "Gah!" And so they split up with the Rangers. And I think with this Ranger, we had Nexel and Atticus, and then Thaddeus in his horse form and Pietro were with Petra, right? So even though the Executioner does have a 40 movement, and he's able to move pretty fast, and I could have turned it into a chase. The problem was I had already said how much mist and fog there was in the city, and there's so many little alleys that they can turn down and kind of break line of sight with him that he's just not going to be able to stay close to either of these parties. So now I had them split into two groups in the inner city of Drakkenheim, and I'm like, finally, some encounters. I'm going to be able to jump these guys with a whole band of something awful, advanced gibbering mouthers, and then these guys are going to hear them getting killed and blah 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 blah. Well, you'll never guess what. They didn't roll any encounters. And then I had them roll on behalf of the two urban rangers to make the difficult survival checks. Because, of course, they thought when they split up, oh, we'll just go different ways around this building and we'll meet up the next block over. But, of course, they come around and it's a random bridge over a river or over a stream. And these guys come around and it's a blank wall, So, but they both made really good survival checks. The party manages to meet back up, and they had survived and escaped from Slaughterstone Square. They made another really good set of survival checks, and I said that they were able to actually pick up the trail of the ghouls, and they followed it to a sewer grate, and they saw that the ghouls had all squeezed down into the sewers underneath the city. And so even though Elias Drexel had said, this is just a scouting operation, you guys are allowed to go see where they are, but you're not allowed to take my rangers into the Temple of Orcus. But in spite of that, they decided they're going to at least stick their heads down in that sewer grate and kind of look around at the beginning of next session. Hey, if you appreciate what we're doing, would you please give us a like? Please maybe make a comment on some of these episodes just so they get more notice and attention. And we'll be back next week.